a room there.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning everyone, especially to our guest lecturer, Dr. Sharifah Salwa Said Maza from UTM Skudai Johor Bahru. So today we will have or we will listen to Dr. Sharifah about her work on space in text and sustainable design, sociability and sociability versus accessibility. Okay, if you have the questions, you can write your question in the chat box and nanti Miss akan baca after Dr. Sharifah finish her lecture. And then itulah. Okay, so after Dr. Sharifah bagi lecture juga, nanti kita akan ada Q&A session lah. So I think Dr. Sharifah pun dah sangat excited, dah ready to share her presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharifah, for agreeing to give a lecture to my student. Okay, but I would like to have Dr. Sharifah. Maybe Dr. Sharifah, you can share some background of your educational background, your project, your current project, and where your cities of Johor Bahru, your city of Johor Bahru. I don't know because some of my student is from Johor Bahru, so maybe you can share some of your experience of your project in Johor Bahru.
Okay, all right. Is that it?
ada dalam ni ada 2-3 orang daripada Johor Bahru.
Oh, okay. I think I saw earlier Dr. Hazrina. She's very diligent, Dr. Hazrina.
Hi, how are you?
Hi Dr. Good, I'm fine. Thank you for
Alright.
joining us, Dr. Hazrina.
Ya, sambil-sambil ni. Alright.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Just a very small Fatihah for me. I think for the Muslim we normally do that before I start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay. Very, very sweet introduction by your Miss Nur Shakila binti Khalid from UITM. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. And at the end of the day, it is about sharing session. A little background as requested from your supervisor for me to basically just share my background. So I've had my PhD from the Bartlett University College London years back. And before that, I'm really trained architect, trained as an architect basically. And then when doing master's PhD, is more towards planning as well as urban design. And when it comes to the urban design, there is also this thing on space syntax analysis, a space syntax field of work or field of school of thoughts at the Bartlett. So I joined them. Okay, hence my work is actually more on the issue on balancing the sociability and accessibility of the use of the streets. Yeah, sociability and accessibility. I think probably you have seen a lot of these things actually going on in our practice, in our profession. But when it comes to really the objectifying the behavioral pattern in terms of the starting activities, still much to be done. Yeah. So I do define the sociability. I also do define the accessibility of the use of streets through stationary pattern of activities of behavior of people. Hence my topic is actually, again, sociability, accessibility towards sustainable design through objectivity of people sitting and standing and space syntax, spatial network analysis. Thank you again to Ms. Nushakila Khalid from the Faculty of Seni Bina Perancangan as well as Ukon. And please, students, allow me to be delivering my talk today in English. Yeah, I hope we sharing session, we understand each other. Thank you so much for that. All right, moving on. I always mention on this one, when you're giving a lecture, you have a sharing session, you need to have a vision. This is something that I always inculcate into myself. Yeah. So my vision is actually a way forward. It's always about a way forward. How are we going to take ourselves or our profession further? And what are we going to do about it? So I think this one is a reflection from when and why I joined Space Syntax School of Thoughts, actually. at the bottom. Yeah, so also with these things, with this space and times, urban design planning, all this urban design, I think they came up since 1980s, 90s, I think, right? 70s, 80s, responsive environment. I think Miss Shakila probably has also taught you on urban space, a little bit of a theory, right? A little bit of the background on how this evolution, yeah, of the urban design school of thoughts came out into the profession, yeah. So it is about also about thinking out of the box. I think our profession, we can't really see our profession just to work in silo. Yeah. Our profession in academic, as much as the teacher, as much as the lecturer is teaching you, we also have to engage the industry at the same time. So with this kind of a method of objectivity of the empirical analysis, as I said, empirical analysis on this objectivity of these behavior pattern of users on the street as well as public spaces, it allows us to give to have a thinking outside the box, yeah, outside the box, into getting our operation to be more objective, per se, more empirical, not so much onto very narrative. It's okay. It's okay. Narrative is fine. Yeah, it's like during if you read books by Jacobs, yeah, Jane Jacobs, the famous one, all that. So all these things came out. It can be an observation, normative theory, and all that. But I'm really more keen into something empirical so that I can really something tangible rather than intangible. Saying that as well, in architecture practice, in architecture education, in architecture world, as you know, we're good at designing, at graphics and all that, 3D, but at the same time, we also kind of like can be quite narrative, less empirical, yeah. But when it comes to research, I'm trying to make it more empirical. So okay, so again, the vision is also about we adjust and adjusting our spirit. Now is about the pandemic spirit. I hope you see my slides. Yeah, my slides there. Okay, all right. And then opening our heart to various measures such as digital thinking, transformation, architecture scheme operation, and stepping up our promotion. I'm saying here architecture, but it's not just architecture, urban design as well as planning. Okay. So what is it that I'm talking about on this sociability and accessibility? Why so? Yeah, why so? I always reflect again, maybe many of some people who have attended my lecture as well, I always bring this quote, yeah, kind of a mantra for me especially, yeah. The measure of a great city is actually is in the public spaces. It doesn't mention about all these high skyscrapers, no, no. So this person, John Ruskin, was a philosopher, arts and whatever in the 1800s. During that time, the rise of the capitalism, all these things. So they see there's a problem in the social interaction, people becoming more individualistic. And during the modernism, I think all those car rises, all these high rises coming up. Dr. Hasrina, I think probably she's very well versed in terms of theory of the history of architecture in the world. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, so that was my interpretation. Yeah, there's the thing about the beauty of research. Yeah, we always have a platform to debate. It doesn't mean that what you say is always right. What you say is always the opening of other things to be taken off, to be developed and explored and researched further. Okay, again, Ruskin, so that's my mantra. And also I remember this one is actually the evolution of this kind of phrase, I would say, during the New London architecture.org in the early 2000s, I think, yeah, when the transformation of these public spaces in London at that time. So anyway, again, I think you've been seeing this, the goal number 11 for Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. Since our country involved with the World Urban Forum in 2018, I think, World Urban Forum, the first time we had, you can see the whole country, at least the whole Wilayah is trying to do the bicycle network. With various problems here and there. But we saw that actually happening at that time, and I was there too. Anyway, so sustainable design, sustainable goals is always about addressing the needs of the cities through the communities. Communities here for me is just public users. I do on streets is for people as always. Yeah, by right. Yeah, but we can see a lot of problems in our streets as we know it as well. So okay, and I think as before that, I think due to that, we know the United Nations, even the Declaration Kuala Lumpur 2030, we know two-thirds of the urban population is going to be in urban, population of the world will be in urban centers. So we need to build and manage our urban spaces. We have to think whether we want to build it for cars or we want to build it for people. So we really have to be serious. So this is therefore the sociability and accessibility. I cannot do much. I can only do a certain level of analysis, yeah, in my case. But banging on the fact that there needs to be a little bit balance between the sociability aspects as well as the accessibility aspects of the street users, static and dynamic, yeah. So again, why is this matters in my work? I question why is this matters? It is about the phenomena of modern city living. Yeah. As I mentioned a bit earlier from the Ruskins, and then there goes Simone. If you read from the urban sociologist from 1896, the rise of the capitalism. Yeah. Sociology of modernity begins to emerge the first time by this classic old philosopher, yeah, by them. And then sociological thinking. You know what sociology is, students? Planning students? Miss Lushakila, do they know what sociology is? This is my favorite question to my students.
I hope they know because they already joined the class of social planning.
Social planning. Okay,
Yeah, we have social planning.
can anyone answer that or write on the chat box? What is sociology?
Yeah, you can write in the chat box. Kalau malu nak turn on your mic.
Yes.
So maybe doktor boleh continue dulu while we waiting for the
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, it's okay. You know what? You know
Rasa
what?
diorang tengah berfikir tu.
They can Google
Google lepas tu copy and paste.
simply because I like it to be more interactive. Yeah, that's just my thing. I like to be more interactive and give a bit of a surprises. Vice versa. Sometimes students surprise you. Sometimes I also surprise students. Yeah. Okay. That's the sharing session. There's a discourse I call it. Okay. I'll let you dwell into. Maybe we'll put this into the question later on. Question and answer later on. Okay, the balance, and therefore from this thinking, sociology thinking. So my work relate to this onto having to know the balance. To be honest, my thesis was very simple. It came from a very, very, very simple observation. Simple observation. Why is this like how to say elitist street? My case study at that time was Regent Street in London, and basically it was just a very simple questions. Why are these streets somehow actually mostly occupied by car, not by people? This is just from the very basic observation, and yet it's actually is the great street in the world, one of the great streets in the world, something like this. Yeah. So that was just a question from the balance within the sociability and accessibility. Okay. All right. So therefore, I put these thinking streets. Yeah. Questioning streets and interaction, back to what Simil was saying, the phenomena of interaction. Okay, questioning streets and interaction, as streets is already in the debate of the sociology as well as urban design, etc., etc. So when questioning streets and interaction, there is also this tangible and intangible aspects of it. The tangible aspects of it, we address the function of the streets to be sociable and accessible. So we relate to the fact on the static pattern of users as well as dynamic pattern of users. You know what dynamic means, yeah? What's dynamic means? Dynamic, something really moving very, very close. It's a very dynamic, yeah? Okay. And in theory, for the intangible aspects of it, is actually more towards the aspects of interaction, isn't it? The interactions that's happening between people, right? The interaction between people and the physical design, and as well as the physical design itself to the spatial bird form. Yeah, to the spatial bird form. Um, yeah, I'm saying this because there's a lot of theories that are going on in this one. We talk about man environment and things like this. Is like taking it a little bit further. Yeah, sometimes there's also issue on this environmental possibilism, environmental probabilism that comes into this quest for interaction in my work. Yeah. All right. So my work again is set developing a theoretical and practical framework to address issues on streets, livability, sustainable design, etc. So of course I have my constitution. It's not just constitution by the MPs, but there is also constitution of MPs, members of parliament. They've got their own constitution. Yeah, constituents. But this one is a concentration of interaction itself on the street spaces, street design. In my work, I put it as a sociability, accessibility. This is just a very basic framework. Yeah. I've seen some people coming up from our group, Space Syntax Malaysia. A bit embarrassing.
Ada Dr. Azhan, I rasa.
Yeah, Azhan. I hope I won't disappoint you. We'll see. All right. Okay. And then how do I do this? Yeah, having this constitution. I hope the students. This one is a third year, kind of like third year course on this. I know bachelor not so much into the research, but I think now it's something that we already inculcate even during the bachelors. I hope they're okay with this. Yeah. So how do I do that? So of course, in the work, whatever work that we do, whatever research that we do, we need to have a definition. Yeah. So I do define my own streets. You can look into the definition of streets. It's many literature actually. Yeah. So this is my definition. Yeah. Is of course is a linear physical entity. Yeah. And forms the space in between buildings. In your literature, you also read all these things. Space in between buildings, in between alleys, in between bird form, whatever the bird forms may be. Yeah, and it's normally we regard streets as a conduit, yeah, or a channel for the dynamic behaviors of both traffic and pedestrian. But to me, it is also a linkage that is able to transform itself as a place, as a meeting place, as absorbing a stationary pattern of activities, yeah, and absorbing, accommodate in order to make it livable. Okay. All right. So methodology in my work, yeah, I think Ms. Shakira also has taught you on this methodology in your work using space syntax. I also use space syntax, very basic one. Yeah. For those doing research, they use a little bit more than that. But for my bachelor group. Not bachelor, masters, just normal masters of architecture, not research based, is a very simple one. Yeah, we use space syntax again as my work, focuses on the static activities as well. So integrate, yeah, between space syntax and static activities. I don't think I need to go much, but it's just very briefly, space syntax, as you know, as has been taught by your lecturer, theories of spatial configurations. I call it as a network of things. Yeah, people talk about this, but then in terms of understanding it through the space, through the prism of space, not much been done until Bill Hiller, late Professor Bill Hiller, Professor Julian Hansen, and the group at UCI, formulate and produce this technique. Yeah. Again, network. As the word may sound itself, network is always about fragments. Yeah, it's always about things that can be broken down. Yeah, spaces that can be broken down into components. So that's network. Network in the end it becomes components. Yeah, so that's what the kind of the theory of space syntax. Yeah. All right. So because of that, so there are three main conceptual conceptions of space according to space syntax. The first one is actually, can you see my cursor? All right, the first one is people move in linear space, people move in a convex space, and there is always a visual visual field that a person, one already established once one is actually located or having been himself or herself being in space. So already generated a visual field. So that is actually the iService. Okay. All right. So very, very basic work, spatial network analysis of cities in Malaysia. Yeah. Uh, because I'm from Johor Bahru, so I'm in Johor Bahru currently. It's the very basic one, Johor Bahru. Yeah. This one is an old map. Of course, I have the latest map with more sophisticated spatial data, but this one is a very basic one. Just a general to see. This is our main road, Jalan Wong Afo. Of course, this is the district of Johor Bahru. Yeah, district of Johor Bahru. It's just one thing that I like to highlight in this case. This Jalan Wong Afo is the main street in Johor Bahru city center itself. It's actually along it. There is also Sungai Segat or Segat River, the famous. Others from Johor, they know this. Yeah, now Erda is doing kind of renovation. But what is actually excites me on this issue is actually when I gave a kind of a lecture as well to primary, no, to secondary students from somewhere, not locals. Let's say from Singapore, secondary student. And you know, lecture was in UTM Johor, and I asked them, "Do you know river of Sungai Segat, the Segat River of Johor Bahru?" They said, "What do you expect?" They said, "No." Do you know City Square? City Square is the city mall, is the shopping mall. Oh yeah, okay. And Segat River is just next to it actually. So this is what I'm saying about how we design our streets. Yeah, this week all the questions come back to us as a designers, something like this. So that's why I want to show this. Wongafo has a very high integrated streets, very highly integrated street space. Yeah? But yet, and Sungai Segat is just next, but yet people do not see, cannot recognize, do not even know the Segat River exists along in parallel. Okay, so this is just a very, very, very basic on this GIF, how to pronounce that? Anyway, so this one, GIF analysis on the Kuala Lumpur city center. Yeah, Kuala Lumpur city center. Very basic analysis, 5-kilometer radius. We did a spatial analysis based on facts from the Kuala Lumpur city center itself. Yeah, right, just a GIF. Okay, 5-kilometer radius. You can see very, very general here. This one is the Jalan Tun Razak. And where is it? Trying here. It's somewhere there. Oh, okay, I think this one is actually KLCC itself. Now you can see this one. Yeah. Anyway, so this is Jalan Tun Razak, the question. And we see the Jalan Ampang is not so, how do you say? Not so very red, yeah, in this case, yeah. And we questions during the spatial analysis, we can question, yeah, we will have high volume of traffic on Jalan Tun Razak. As many of you, you are in Kuala Lumpur and you know how very crucial Jalan Tun Razak is. And is it as crucial as Jalan Tun Razak? Is Jalan Ampang as crucial as Jalan Tun Razak? Is Jalan Ampang is the same level of a crucial to address traffic as it is for Jalan Tun Razak? So we can question this as a designers. Yeah. So this is what I question from the very basic spatial analysis. And of course, next to it, as you all know as well, there's a Kampung Baru. Yeah, this is a Kampung Baru itself. Next to it, which is actually this is KLCC and this is Kampung Baru. And along Kampung Baru itself, we can see several network, which is high, which is actually very, very high integrated area. I'm showing all this. I believe this class already familiar with spatial text. Yes, Miss Shakila? Okay. So that's all right. So we here in Kampung Baru, we see that this Jalan Raja Muda Abdul Aziz, high integrated street, as well as Jalan Raja Abdullah, which is lower. I think that the value is a bit lower. So again, we question, do we want, when we have this kind of a secondary street, not necessarily primary, but serve as a primary when it comes to serve for people, for people, as far as people is concerned, they're quite primary, but in terms of the context itself, they can be a secondary. So do we want to have the same volume going the volume of traffic, in the primary and the secondary streets. Yeah. So okay. So my Jalan Ampang case study. Therefore, when you have question on this, therefore I'm advocating on this Ampang, making Jalan Ampang as a great street of Malaysia. Yeah, from my work. Yeah. Okay, so this is Jalan Ampang, the one that I've been focusing on as always from LRT Damwangi. There, Jalan Gunus, Damwangi Station in Damwangi here. Actually, further down a little bit where this Jalan Gunus, I think. Gunus. No, Gunus, sorry. I can't remember. It's AIA where AIA is actually. Renaissance is here. Or is it Renaissance? I think Renaissance is here. Jalan Sultan Ismail somewhere, and then this one is Ampang Park. I think sorry to say that we no longer have this Ampang Mall, 70s design being knocked down, yeah? Which is quite heartbreak. But anyway, can't do much for now. So that's a stretch. So I think looking a little bit closer, analysis of axilla analysis of corridor. I'm not using this. I'm not showing you the more sophisticated measure like choice, angular analysis, segment analysis of this one. Yeah, bachelor level. I suppose this one is enough just to give you an idea. Yeah, even for my presentation, it's enough to give you an idea. We can see all this one. Very, very straightforward. Empirical, very, very straightforward analysis, straightforward thinking that gives you a foundation of understanding how the structure, the network structure is within a certain area, a certain urban context. Yeah. So this is Jalan Ampang again, and Sungai Kelang over there, Sultan Ismail over there, yeah, etc. In 2020, coming closer, yeah, we look at the area. Jalan Ampang is up 256 over here. Yeah, so we can look at the value of the integration value of this one, of many of the several streets, primary, secondary, and tertiary streets around the area. Okay, so because of the spatial analysis network, space and time, so we compare. I think it's easy for us to compare the structure, the network of space from during those time in archival materials, and we can also compare them to the current condition. Yeah, currently we look at 2020, we compare to 1957. So I think in 1957, we saw that Jalan Ampang is actually is quite high. The value integration is very high. But however, in 2020, we saw it's actually quite low. Yeah. Or is that just now? Yeah, it's quite low. 398. 359. Maybe we think that it is not that very far apart, 398, 3.59. But actually, to be honest, if you really look closer into it, therefore, there are some kind of more sophisticated measures in space impact, choice analysis, segment analysis. But even by not doing that, we can see already during those times, there are lots of connectivities. And I believe now this connectivity gone simply because maybe the occupation of these lots spaces being used for a different purpose. For instance, block of built forms space. So that kind of like limit the connectivity, hence limit the social interaction, hence limit the social encounter, co-presence of other people, something like this. So that's the analysis, a very, very basic analysis that we found. Yeah? Space impacts, However, compared to 2020 maps, the full potential of Jalan Ampang was not being addressed, I would say. Yeah? These, again, students, these are just analysis, this is research. Yeah? Something that we need to think about, something we can discuss and see how we can tackle this problem a way forward. Yeah? All right, so again, as I mentioned, the synthesis earlier, and now we have this post-pandemic city, we have to think a little bit on that as well. All right, so when we do this spatial analysis, of course, we can also overlay. I think planning students also do this, right? You layer the analysis, right? Now we layer the analysis with the public open space, reserve forest, summit terrain, and we can layer, yeah? We can layer all these pocket spaces, and then we layer them as well with this axial analysis, yeah? And then we can also find the potential pocket spaces that we can develop further in order to enhance the sociability and balance with the accessibility of the streets. Okay. Again, when we do that, we do have the synthesis. We can, as architecture student, I think Dr. Miss Shakil also mentioned now the planning students start looking at the 3D dimension analysis, yeah, or 3D interpretation of the space that they are dealing with, rather than looking at the space, looking at map 2D, trying to look at it 3D. So this is what we are doing as well, yeah. So why in doing that as well, it's not easy to get this balance. So how to do this balance, to get this balance to the sociable and accessibility? Of course, there is a school of thoughts on understanding streets and everyday life. Yeah? It is about understanding everyday life rather than streets. I put streets there. That is my word. Okay. It is about the understanding everyday life. If you read, there is a kind of like school of thoughts on that one. Okay. Therefore, I go on to the static activities. Okay, I think we can see more often. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think people in streets watch other people, right? I think this one is just taking further from William Watt mentioned in his book as well, right? Social life as small urban spaces, right? People watch other people simply because whether directly or indirectly. But these are static activities. They are very, very subtle, very, very subtle. And a lot of these measures that we come up with, walkability index, etc., etc., is all about, majority of them is about walking behavior rather than static. So I am looking into static activities to integrate with a spatial network analysis. Okay, static observations. To imagine people watch other people. This one is literally watching other people, using the telescope, things like this. And people meet other people, and I don't know what this person is doing. I think he's just enjoying himself. Whether we can still do that, I do not know. In streets, urban spaces, kids playing, we don't know. Yeah, these are all imagination. Yeah, it's like what Einstein said. Yeah, we have to be great in our imagination. So, okay, static observation, we map them out. We do observation, yeah, and people following. Not just static observation, but also people following. Rather than spatial network is doing gate observation, but in this case, I use people following simply because we need to know where they come from and where do they go and whether they spend time on that street and how long. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 minutes, etc., etc. So when it comes to people following, I always making this comment to my students is like, maybe the boys will be like, it's like literally stalking people. Whether the boys stalking the girls stalking the boys, that is up to you, But the point is, you have to stalk people for a certain period of time. Yeah, so that for me, that's why I love doing urban. You really look at the behavior, can study the behavior of people. Yeah? Okay, this is just how we map it. A very basic one. For example, you have a center, water parking, square, whatever. This one is in Johor Bahru. Okay, these are the kind of like the activities that we map in the streets, yeah, in places that we think, and also this is how we map out the and categorize the numbers of movement of people when we do the people following. Okay, right. Conclusions based on the findings from my work. Tertiary streets acquire better correlation or better used by static activities. In space and time, when you do spatial network, you need to do correlation analysis. Yeah, you need to correlate in order to get some external regression analysis. 0.5 is very bad. No, 0.5 is mediate. 0.75 is moderate. 0.9 to number 1 is a good correlation. So, but when we do the correlation between the static activities and also spatial network integration values, etc., we find that the tertiary streets, we compare between primary, secondary, and tertiary street, as the map I showed earlier, yeah? The findings, and we do find this, yeah? And then therefore we think that is actually quite common. We found that tertiary streets, small streets, back alleys, are more sociable than the primary streets. I think these questions that I have raised earlier in the bigger map earlier, yeah? So that's a kind of very, very, very important findings. I think for the post-pandemic, this one is just a sample of framework that we did in our class. We want to think about the Jalan Ampang after the post-pandemic spirit. We need to rebuild the tourism sector, activating street frontages. We need to reclaim public and pocket spaces. We need to deal with the micro community needs. We have to adapt our streets to the pandemic users. Hyper proximity. I think this one, it's a lot more can be said on this hyper proximity. Whether we want to have a proximity, what level of proximity we can manage for the personal, individual space. Yeah, and active mobility in terms of not just vehicular. I think this is many of the soft mobile mode actually. Yeah. Now I think on Jalan Ampang, I think a lot of people doing the scootering, the cycling now is actually becoming a culture in Kuala Lumpur. Yet we are still seeing them, and we see them in Johor, probably all over Malaysia now, and it becomes a gateway. In this case, urban gateway is the because in reference to the Jalan Ampang. Yeah. Okay, so we question, can streets be reclaimed? Yeah, we question for people to interact safely, for cyclists to travel safely, to walk, of course, safely, and for users to play safely. Yeah. So again, this is just a very basic, our interpretation, 3D analysis, 3D interpretation in our work for Ampang. So we saw this, the importance of making streets to be sociable and accessible. Yeah. We also relate to the static people. We also know crowd. When it comes to pandemic, we need to also know how to manage crowd. We can do this actually, the spatial network. Yeah, and topography, as I mentioned earlier, the physical design, the relation between the physical design to the environment. Basically, it is about the topography. I call it urban topographies. Yeah, and a topology is actually the spatial network, space and analysis itself. Yeah. Okay, so some of the interpretation, and some of you have seen this one, Ampang Broadway, my very first work with my students at the time, so very proud. This is another interpretation, how to make the Great Street of Jalan Ampang. This is also interpretation we did our interpretation on Jalan Diak Konsai, because lots of foods actually over there people do not know, because it's a bit off actually, that streets. Some interpretation on Jalan Raja Abdullah itself, which is a Kampung Baru, yeah, Jalan Raja Abdullah, and this one is actually Jalan Raja Laut as a greenery. So what are the takeaways? Yeah, this is just something that my takeaway, my synopsis for the whole work that I'm doing. Of course, tertiary streets has a quite better correlation in my work. And to me, the making of livable, sustainable design of streets, you must consider the heritage, ecology, contemporary. I call it contemporary spirit of the soul, the soul of the spirit. Yes, this is community. When it comes to the spirit of the souls, I would say it depends on who the community is. So we need to relate it to them. Yeah, we need to relate to them, and then we need to. As a way forward for me, we need to bring this, to bring the community into the spirit of managing our streets. We need to bring it. I think for one of the very important lessons we learned during the pandemic, or after the pandemic as well, is about this micro community revolution also. Micro community. Even now, people talk about 10 minutes walk, right? 10 minute cities or something like this is coming out, but it's already exists there. I mean, one thing that we actually take it for me, I'm sorry if I do not mean to be offending anybody, but if I may say, I think we tend to ignore how important it is to get us to be able to walk 10 minutes to our nearest, to our store, yeah, to our shops nearby. The importance to walk in Malaysia, I don't think we really emphasize it. But I hope, I'm positive, keeping my hope alive. It's like Martin Luther King. So I hope we will be able to do 10 minutes walk. Very important. I don't want to drive if I have to go to my streets, to my shops nearby. That's wrong. That is so wrong. Okay, right. So community very important. So in my work as well, I think I also relate. Yeah, I think from this year as well, in early this year, I think we also I also give some talks at camp, yeah, promotion of the profession. We have to integrate our work, yeah, between research and design. We have to strengthen relation between academic and industry, and us, I think, as a nation, we have to trust and believe in research. I hope, because I think now I was telling my students, I can no longer believe that you can design, do whatever without research. After my involvement with the Space Impacts Limited London, yeah, and I'm really thankful for the group actually, for the knowledge that I have acquired from them. And also the trickiest part is actually how can we convince others, and I'm still not good at it. Maybe Miss Shakila better at it. Maybe Dr. Hazrina, Dr. Azhan is good for it. Go for it. How can we convince others? And you students, I think I knew, I heard, or at least I was understood that many of the students are going for the practical training after this. Convince, yeah, convince, and come to me, come to us. For those who are kind of like, no, this kind of work is important, yeah. So just these are very basic references in my work. I thank you. So I will leave you with a little bit of video. Hold on, yeah. Let me see whether this one can play or not. All right. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you again, Miss Shakila, for inviting me. I hope it's okay.
Yes. Are you done, Dr. Sharifah?
Done. Thank you very much.
Okay, rupanya 59 slide tu pun taklah panjang sangat rupanya. I thought like it will take like 1 hour, one and a half hour. Okay, by the way, Dr. Sharifah, I have a questions before my student bertanya. So let the lecturer tanya dulu. Okay, why you choose Jalan Ampang to carry your project? I mean, like, what is the characteristic of Jalan Ampang that spark your interest to conduct the sociability and accessibility project?
I like to ask these questions to the students.
I think most of them pun Jalan Ampang kat je tak tahu agaknya.
Aha, you got it.
Ah.
You have the answer. That is why I talk about the Sungai Sigit just now, right? To the Sigit River. I mean, even some people from Kuala Lumpur, they don't know where Jalan Ampang is. Something like this. You have the question. Sorry, you have the answer already. Is that okay? We take that.
Not okay. I don't get your answer.
For me, yeah, we have this. When I started my work, basically, it is not so much about the Great Spirit. It is actually about the Great Spirit is actually from the literature. because my concern, my very first observation was about the balance of use between the traffic and pedestrian, and I saw this street is actually is very important streets, not just Regent Street, many streets. But because I was in London, I used Regent Street, but there are many streets in the world as well, in other cities. At the same time, when you're coming back, and I look at these during that time, we are also building Petronas Tower. Yeah, we're also building. The nations started building the Petronas Tower. Okay, but then when I came back, it was like observing it from far. I would say, and observing and also okay, we have a very this is like actually a wall tower, isn't it? Known for tourists. Look at the streets in the surrounding vicinity. What does it do? Does it really complement? Because I think it's not together. It's not coordinated. So therefore, in making Jalan Ampang as a great street in Malaysia. Is that all right?
Yeah. Okay. I get your answer. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Azhan. Thank you, Dr. Azrina, for joining us. I think
Thank
they
you
have
for joining.
they have to leave because for another meeting and appointment. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. I open the question to any to the student or any participants from Space Syntax community. We have siapa ada dekat sini?
I don't know.
I think we have AR2.
Archie is here. Okay.
Yes. And also we have a student from Master Urban Space Design. If you have the question, you can write in the chat box or any story you want to share about Ampang or about Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, they don't have to ask me questions. They can also share their
Yeah.
thinking. But I do have a question. What is sociology?
So far no one answer, no one give us the answer. So mas chat box still lagi kosong. We're still waiting for your answer. What's the definitions of the sociology? So Dr. Sharifah nak tahu in your perspective apa. Since you all pernah belajar social planning, I think dengan Encik Taufik. So maybe one of you ada idea what is the sociology.
But yeah, please. I like the students to also because they are based in Puncak Alam, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, sure they go to KLCC, right? Am I wrong or what do they think about this kind of advocation? Whether we should do it or not? Because I have questions also being posed to me when I was on the BFM. You know BFM? Students listen to BFM? Business
Radio BFM, right? Yes.
BFM radio, right? And also on the TV3 as well. But at the same time, the BFM asking all these questions, whether we want to have it as an elitist or things like this. But my point is about public users. I mean, you can listen to my BFM actually. You can also listen to my talk. It's on YouTube. I can show you as well later on about my take on this outcome. But I like to hear the students from Kuala Lumpur share their thoughts and knowledge on this. I'll leave that to you, Miss.
Macam tak ada lagi respon from the student. I think because they are in the mood of midterm break agaknya. So ada anyone nak share ataupun nak tanya soalan? Okay, so sementara tunggu respon from student. Okay, Dr. Sharifah, what inspired or motivate you to continue to have the project that using the space syntax?
For me, Space Impact is always about giving us the foundation knowledge, the foundation on understanding, on describing the urban space through the network analysis. And also for me, what inspires me as well is, as I said, architecture. I was from the architecture background. Is very, it's too intangible. Space is very intangible. Urban space, I think I can understand, and students having problem understanding what is urban space is about. Even the definition of urban space could vary so much. Yeah. So I think because of this empirical data, to turn something intangible tangible. Of course, there are lots of debates on space and time. There are lots of debates on it, but one layer of understanding is intact in terms of, because space to build is like a, what is it? It's like a One layer is cities even as an object again, as an object, becoming abstract based on the geometry of the spatial form. Is the geometry of the spatial form of the urban environment. All these things, blah blah blah. All this we can say this. But I think the graph theory, the graph analysis, all this one, it has a process of analyzing space and calculating space, the topological and things. I think it becomes foundation. It's like when you want to build a house or something like this. Basically, this gives me a foundation of network of structural fabric structure, yeah? Urban fabric structure. Okay,
Mhm.
that is
Uh,
that.
I think we have a response from student from Izati. From my perspective of view, sociology referring to the understanding of the society as planning is also a form of social action. Lebih kurang tepat juga lah kan Doktor, is about to understand the society, to understand the community, the social interactions and so on. Is it okay? The answer from the student, Dr. Sharifah?
There are a few. How many of them? There are a few. I think keep it coming.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe at the same time you can give your comment regarding the answer. Maybe you want to add on.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see the second one. You want to read the second one?
Sociology is a combination between the group and the community of human structure that make it as a social group. When we talk about the sociology study, we studied about the human behavior, the relationship between the social group and entity. Yeah, I think almost correct, almost there.
Very very difficult. It's the same. I think the difficulty to explain it in writing in sociology is the same way. Is the same difficulty that I face to explain space impacts. Even the searchability, accessibility, your mouth, your tongue can go blah blah, all these things going like that. In a simple expression, sociology is the science of society.
Betul.
Yeah, it's just a science. That's why Muhammad Zain, yeah,
Mhm.
mentioned about the social group, the relationship between the social relation. It's just a science. How we look at the science. When there is a science, we look into the scientific evidence. We bring statistics analysis. It's a science of society. It's the same with the space impacts. To me, it's also a science space. Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you for answering it. Good.
If any maybe ada student kalau still lagi nak try to give the definition of sociology, you can you can write in the chat box, nanti Miss akan baca later. Okay, Dr. Sharifah, I have another question. I rasa I je yang tanya soalan kot.
I like the students to also share their thoughts.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah, please, yeah. Please, please, you can ask your questions. But I'm saying I like to hear their thinking, their take on Jalan Ampan itself.
Yeah.
Okay, please, I'm listening.
By the way, Doctor, your background is architecture and urban planning, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So how do you see space tech will help architect and urban planner in decision making, especially in design process?
Okay. How does it help? Let me just put you to this thing about this. As I mentioned about the foundation, when you have I think one of the slides I show about the layers of development. So that's how it works. So we layer all this analysis. Let me just go back to the slides. Yeah.
Sure can.
Yeah, go back to the slides. I think we can layer that. To me, layer by layer. Before, I wouldn't even think about this layer by layer things much. Until I really use trying to understand space impacts and do a bit of GIS and all that. Yeah, all this stuff. Before that, so focus space will be layer. So that's how it helps me. But for me, when you do this, you need to, of course, you need to bring into the statistics. Yeah, you need to do the correlation analysis. Whatever GIS now can do all this thing. I think Amir is here already. He's really an expert on that one. Yeah, so basically this is how you help me. I think help me. I can't do it without knowing the integration value. Again, integration value has its own definition. Of course, integration help us also to recognize the centrality of a space, of a place. Choice value, as you know now, is becoming more sophisticated. There are choice value in depth map analysis. Choice value help us to understand the route that is actually being chosen most, being used by other people. Yeah. Space index also help us to predict the future. For instance, you have one description of urban fabric, urban structure, and then after that you want to add. In my case, this time we want to add more connectivity. We want to add a new proposed sites. So we can do another aspect of correlation, can compare before and after, something like this. So that help us, giving us a tool to understand what is happening now and what is actually likely to happen in the future. So it's a prediction. Yeah, we can predict the density, something like this. Hopefully. Mhm. So that's how it kind of like inspired me.
Okay.
Amir here. Amir has
Yeah,
got.
I also noticed Amir joined the Google Meet. We
We
also
have
have Cik Azlan from architecture. Cik
yeah.
Azlan Arif. Do you have any question, Cik Azlan?
Oh, Azlan. Yeah, Azlan.
Yeah.
Hi.
Amir ada.
Yeah. From our.
Dr. Azalillah pun ada. Oh,
Oh,
baru left.
left. Okay.
Baru tu dalam. Okay, anything, okay, I think maybe a bit difficult, student to share. Ada anyone? Tak ada. Okay, we have a one question from Zaim. What kind of the example of the reactivate straight frontage, as Dr. mentioned just now on the slide, for the part of post-pandemic to encourage more static activity on the street? Straight frontage maksudnya how to rejuvenate ataupun how to reactivate straight frontage.
Street frontage, as our doctor mentioned just now on the slide, for the part of this. Yeah. Okay. Dr. Sharifah, yeah? Zaim?
Oh, Dr. Salwa.
No.
Why you prefer people to call
Ah,
you
I'm not
instead
gonna
of
tell
Dr.
this.
Salwa?
I'm not gonna talk here. Yeah? Dr. Sharifah is fine. Okay. All right. So what was a question is on the frontage, the street frontage, because actually we always mention about the street frontage, correct? In your work, do you advocate on the street frontage or not? With the street frontage design. I think before we see the back allays, for instance, not being used. I think in Kuala Lumpur now you can see a lot of this, how to say, what DBKL has been doing as well, placemaking and all that, and they took all this, how to say, they took the how to say, they took these back alley, but it's not just that. This thing has been practiced for quite some time. I've seen some of the development even at the South Bank before when I joined the Space Impacts Group, the back alley. So is activated street frontages, because at the back alley is also street frontage. People think back alley is not fronting. It is fronting the building. So and then in my work as well, you can see tertiary streets. Tertiary streets are tertiary spaces, for instance, yeah. It's back alleys are tertiary spaces, yeah, something like this. And they are being used more by these people doing static activities. Got it? Zaid? Muhammad Zaid? Yeah.
I think Dr. Sharifah answer your question, Zaim. Okay. Okay. Right, go. Anyone? Any question from the student?
But what do you think? They're activating. We have to activate. What do you think, Shakira? What do you think? It is something that we should carry forward
Yes.
in terms of the livability and things.
Yes.
But of course, the pandemic time, because even my work, I saw tertiary, secondary street, even during that time when space syntax was not as complicated as it is, just using a very basic exit line without using choice analysis, without using segment analysis. We can see already all these tertiary streets, tertiary spaces being used more, because again, that's what I'm saying in my work, I bring this thing, how to say, this issue on environmental probabilism, environmental possibilism, yeah, as well as the issue on crowd. If you look at the social anthropology work by the social anthropologists, not just work by the sociologists, by the social anthropologists on how people behave. When there's a big of crowd, yeah, people tend to move away. If you read also White Williams' work, even Jacob as well, you can see people tend to move away, shy away from big crowd. Yeah, firstly, that is why when the density of a main street, I would say, with full of people walking, yeah, something like this, people trying to stray away. So I always question in terms of getting this balance of use. The balance of use is always about how the interaction that is happening in the small streets be distributed onto these main streets. Because I think sometimes even on the physical design, the topography is actually the topography placement, the topography is actually limited, being limited, not really being, how to say, being emphasized or being implemented, the spots for people to stop and think. It's always this. It's always the challenge to get people to stop. Otherwise, streets becoming, it's just a transit, a channel. It's the same thing currently. I'm also working on the project UTM Techno Park. And we have this old street, Old Pontian Road. And parallel to it is a highway,
Mm.
UTM Skudai Highway. Next to it is Old Pontian Road. Yeah? So Old Pontian Road. So the road becomes dies down, I think it's being left out, being ignored. It becoming just a transit. So the challenge here, how are we going to turn this street to not becoming just a transit? Simply because from this very basic space syntax analysis, yeah, very, very basic space syntax analysis, we saw that this street doesn't really function as a main street currently. It doesn't really cater for big, how to say, a huge volume of traffic. It calls, it calls for uh, soft mobility. It calls for the use of the soft mobile transport, yeah, soft mode, yeah, soft transport mode to be used there. The issue of the shared street, yeah, shared street, Woonerf, students know Woonerf,
Punya
the students know
apply
Woonerf.
in Netherlands, yeah, punya share space.
Shared street spaces can be done. But for me, in order to know this, I have to run my DefMap space impact analysis. Yeah? I have to do that first thing.
Okay, Doctor, if you don't mind, maybe the best example is Jalan Tan Hiut ni in Johor Bahru, kan? They improved. I think this is the project by the Think City. They improved the street from 2 lane to 1 lane, and then they widen the pedestrian walkway tu kan, depan street kan. It's much better to see that people walk instead of, I mean, we fulfill ataupun kita penuhkan jalan dengan parking, dengan all the cars. So I think it's good improvement in Jalan Tan Hiut ni lah. What you
Yeah,
comment?
yeah, but for me, for a small street like that, it's a
Yeah.
small district. You don't need to have cars even.
Yes.
You don't even need to have cars there. I mean, of course, you need to have the lane for the bomber, for the
Mm-hmm.
flights to come in. But you don't even need to have cars. People can still walk. Less even 2 minutes walk.
Yes.
There's lots of voids as well in between buildings as well.
Yes.
You can walk through. We have to encourage us to walk.
Yeah.
My work is I saw that Malaysian walk only about 500 meters. I think in the UK and elsewhere we can see people walk about 3 kilometers. We blame it to the weather, but at the same time, Singapore is also have missing weather, but people walk everywhere. Again, I think it's also back to the transportation system as well as the environmental, because we cut our trees, we believe, like what I showed you already on the Jalan Ampang, the comparison between the 1957 and 2000, right? The 1957 and the 2000, and you can see actually how to see the trees, I believe, on all these little streets being, that one of course is a bigger scale, yeah. I'm sure I believe is being chucked down. Being chucked down. And trees has its function. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a shelter. I love boulevard, and I love pedestrian islands. Small places, small streets. We don't need to have cars into the space. No, I think we need to really rigorous. We have to be firm where we can do We can go onto the pedestrian street full on, where we can do TAR, like TAR, right? Tunku Abdul Rahman, right? We have a shared street. It's fine. And Jalan Ampang, I would say shared street. Definitely shared street.
Mhm.
Yeah, something like this. Okay.
Okay, I think uh, uh, I would like to remind. So when Dr. Sharifah talk
Oh,
about the
she asked me.
quality of walking, so don't forget to reach 10k step per day to burn your calorie and to get more healthy. 10k step per day. So don't forget, okay?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I missed my 10K step this morning because of you.
Uh, okay, so we have a question from Encik Azlan Arif. Thank you for the insightful sharing and thank you, Shakila, for initiating this lecture series. My question will be less on theory but more on the software itself. I noticed that in the video presentation, there were animations of huge crowd walking by on top of different intensities of the road network. Was the animation generated from Space Intact as well, or was it a reproduction of the data you had collected from static observation? It looks like Pet Finder software. Oh, he talked about the software, Pet Finder.
Okay, Pathfinder.
Mm.
It is actually from the Space Impact itself, from the DevMap.
Mm.
Yeah, can always get in touch with me. But currently, that what we did was just from the software itself. You can
Mm.
get the quite simple this one. But sometimes you have to try not 0.3, 0.5, 0.8. You have to try this kind of software, the development. The software. I think 0.5 does it too. Does this one too. Okay, Aslan, where are you?
Yeah, I mean,
Is it okay?
yeah.
Again, talking about this Pathfinder software, various other software. Yeah, like Space Impact is not the only software. I think Amir is also here. It's not the only software. But for me, because I'm architect, from the architecture world, for transport planners, they have a different kind of software. Hence, maybe Aslan mentioned all these things. Um, but space syntax is something that you can also layer it with other data. It's just like GIS, I would say. Yeah. That's why therefore now I think there's an integrated urban modeling also. Yeah. And in this case, we have that. So again, it's not the only software, but it's the software that I'm comfortable using as well. At least give me the theory and the practice. That's why Aslan mentioned here, not so much of the theory, but it's more of a, how to say, not so much of theory, but it's more onto this, what do you call it, on the software itself. Again, space syntax is not just a theory, space syntax is also a method. So space syntax is not just a method, space syntax is also a theory. So hence I'm using it for my yeah. Having said that, at the same time, there are other softwares related. Now we use for the Exiline, it's called X-Men, but there is also X-Woman. Somebody did X-Woman. There is also Place Syntax by the Scandinavian group. Yeah, using Place Syntax, you can use those. But I was currently yet to explore. So a lot of people can explore to how they think they want to explore based on their research. And space syntax, I must say, it evolves. Space syntax evolves. Yeah, it brings out a little bit. It evolves because it's an open source now, right? So anyone can come in and do uh, reassess, reevaluate, and redevelop it to a certain level of area, a niche in the software. I think some planners, I think, could be like architects, could turn to become software developer. I suppose, isn't it? Software developer. I don't know whether planners, but some, I think, this thing, some people. I know some architects, students as well, becoming. Of course, overseas is actually quite common now. These days, I could see people doing this as well, becoming a software developer. Rather, in terms of the spatial network, yeah, not so much onto the not so much onto the other architectural practice profession itself. Diverse. I believe in planning, urban design. Is to tell us a diverse of a professional. Okay, right?
Okay. I think Yazlan already get the answer from you, Dr. Sharifah, and we don't have yet any questions anymore. Okay, I think last. What's your tips or nasihat to give to the students for the class, and maybe in future they will pursuing their study in master. I don't know, maybe they want to do some research with the spacing text. I don't know, maybe some tips or nasihat for you, for them, for students.
Huh. I'm sure each one of us has a mind on our
Mm.
own. I think we have to seek our path. Yeah. And I always tell my students architecture is hard, but it's okay to be hard. And we can get lost, architecture is hard and we can get lost sometimes. I say it's okay to get lost. It's all right. I got lost myself, you know. But at the same time, you have to keep searching and keep working on it. And I don't think anything could come, I would say, there's no shortcut, I would say. No shortcut in life. You have to go through a process. You have to understand the process. Oh, okay, there's another answer. Yeah, Dr. Miss,
Lambat sikit.
you want to read
Uh,
it?
Sociology from Naim. Sociology is a social that emphasizes society, human social behavior, patterns of social interaction, and cultural elements in daily life. Social planning is closely related to the urban planning. For example, in Johor Bahru, various levels of society in that area, they are Indian mosques, Indian Muslim mosques actually, temples, and they are shopping complex building offices and others. For me, the area I mentioned is very strategic and very good because we see the various of the community can get to know the culture in Malaysia more closely. Okay. So Dr. Sharifah faham tak?
I think
Did you get
it's like reading Wikipedia. So congrats. Yeah, Naim, congrats for that.
uh, I think Naim gave examples in Johor Bahru lah. In the city centre of the Johor Bahru, we have in front of the Kota Raya dulu tu kita ada temple, and then ada masjid, ada and then depan sikit tu pun ada Buddha, I think Buddha punya temple. So I think he want to integrate ataupun interpret that we are living in a multi-ethnicity society. So we learn to each other punya cultural values. I think what he trying to say lah kot.
Yeah, correct. I think he's saying what he's saying, meaning that it is a very strategic
Mm.
ways to understand the streets from the sociology point of view as well as we want to understand streets from space index point of view. We understand streets from architecture point of view, from planning point of view. We also need to look at it from the social point of view because we need to know the sociology aspects of the space as well as sociology, the science of society, and all these other how to say elements. They call it urban elements, right? Will need to be integrated. We need to be addressed in order to make this as a sociable and accessible at the same time. That's why for me, uh, when it comes to theory, you want to bring all these other things, yeah. But also at the same time, when it comes to this empirical, I go on to this as something quite basic, which is just behavioral pattern through static activities. You understand? In order to make it more empirical and tangible. But of course, in any research, it opens to much more further research that can be explored and further developed. Yeah.
Okay, so I hope Dr. Sharifah answer your question, Naim. Thank you for the question. I think anything Dr. Sharifah want to add before we end the session?
I
From you,
don't
Dr. Sharifah.
I think I've enjoyed it. I just wish, during these digital sessions, sometimes we could see them. So then I think we have to get used to the fact that we don't really see our audience much. Something like this, yeah. But I think it's good. We have how many questions so far? 5, 6 questions, which is great. Yeah. So that's good already. But I just thought maybe some of us are still maybe Archie, whether I don't know whether he's still around, have something to say. Uh, what's name? Amir still around, but if they want to say, it would be great to have a panel session. Maybe we can take this further to have a kind of a panel session and to discuss, because I'm quite passionate about this, about the making Jalan Ampang as a great street of Malaysia. And KPKT is also looking into this, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully, and looking into this because I need to know. This is my sociology, my science of society, how I want to investigate. So this is kind of also collect data collection process, something like this. So I think it's very important, and I hope Miss Shakila, perhaps you have a Google link where
Mhm.
we can do our attendance. We can key in our attendance. At the same time, I'm hoping that we have a session. My question will be another column saying that what do you think about the issue or the advocation of making Jalan Ampang as a great street of Malaysia, as a national street of Malaysia. I know Lilian Tay quite as passionate as me, and she was surprised when I first said about the Jalan Ampang. We need it. I think we need, and also Jalan Ampang itself is historical historically is very long, and it has lots of history, which needs to be unraveled, make to celebrate and make it as a national street of Malaysia. But I do want to hear the students, and I hope we do have a column that you can share with us later on. That's it from now.
Sure,
From me.
sure. Boleh, boleh. Nanti I will share their answer with you later.
Good luck, students, and do what we do, and try convince others not to cut our trees.
Yeah, exactly. Doctor, maybe you can share link ataupun your I don't know, your platform that maybe student can reach you, or maybe they can review your project ke, your research ke.
First of all, I think from the very first, hang on, go to the very first page. They can get access to my Facebook, my how to say, yeah,
Oh
here.
yeah, people
This one,
people at
people, this
UTM.
one, my scholars, my writings, references there, as well as my research gates. Research gate, yeah, that one you can get access from these people UTM access mother. I also upload, and some of the how to say, I probably would like students to listen to the YouTube. If you don't mind me 1 minute,
Oh sure, no problem, Doctor.
uh, I would like to get the students to listen to my talk during PAM at that time about Ampang Great Street, and I hope the students can listen and give feedback on that one. Yeah. Hang on. What is it?
You too?
PAM Ampang Great Street. Hang on. 1 minute. 1 minute.
You can share the link in the chat box.
Yes, I am looking at the link now.
Okay.
Okay. Good. PAM Ampang Great Street. Okay.
Okay, while Dr. Sharifah share the link in the chat box, don't forget to tick your attendance in near future for today class, for attending. So next week kita tak ada kelas lah. Sekira hari ni kelas ganti. Okay? Sebab nanti kalau attendance dekat near future tutup nanti, all semua bising nanti tak dapat attendance. Okay, Doktor? Boleh?
1 minute. Complete the address. I got it now. Please do comment, because I need, because I think it's needed, and I like to learn from the students much more than what they can learn from me, I suppose. Okay, with that, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
I also share the YouTube link in WhatsApp group with students, so diorang boleh tengok dekat dalam WhatsApp nanti. Alright. Okay. So I think we will end the session for guest lecture today with Dr. Sharifah Salwa. So I would like to say thank you so much for Dr. Sharifah Salwa for agree to give the lecture. And thank you student for joining for attend the guest lecture today, even though during your midterm break. And then thank you for those from text community. We have Cik Azlan, Amir, and tadi pun kita ada Dr. Azadila and Dr. Hazrina and Dr. Azhan, and AR Chu also joined us. So thank you so much. Have a nice day ahead, Dr. Sharifah and everyone. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Salam. Thank you. Bye bye. Assalamualaikum. Bye bye.
Salam.